Hello and welcome to Hello Governor, the podcast. As always, I am Abdullah, and my guest today is someone who is, would you say legendary? Because you voice a character who has pretty much become part of pop culture. Because I feel like, I feel like it's impossible to run into someone nowadays who doesn't know what Rick and Morty is, because, it's become such engulfed in our culture. Even people who've never seen an episode of the show know those characters where it's like, oh, I know Rick and Morty. It's that show where that funny mad scientist goes on adventures with his grandson. So I mean, would you say you're a legendary voice actor?
I would say the character undoubtedly is a legend. I am fortunate enough and consider myself lucky enough to step into this role and to voice Rick, bring Rick to life, hopefully for many years to come. Um, and someday if I achieve legendary status, that would be a dream come true. But the role, of course, is a legend. That there's no disputing that. I am just a lifelong actor who would love to continue working on really fun projects and step into other iconic roles, form and maybe originate some more iconic and legendary roles in what I hope to be a long and fruitful career. But thank you for your kind words and for having me today.
He is the official voice of Mr. Rick Sanchez, the smartest man in the universe, Mr. Ian Cardoni. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I think my first question is usually like, how did you get started? But I think I wanted to ask you, like, face to face, like, does it feel weird being the voice of Rick? Like, does this feel real to you?
Oh yeah, there's tons of pinch me moments to still obviously it was surreal just to be going up for the role initially, and then getting the news, of course, felt like a dream. And yeah, there's still moments where I just have to pause and say, gee, this is real life. And that's mainly because I started as a fan. I loved this show. I watched it from the beginning. Really cared about the characters and care about where the story goes in the future, and I wanted to be in good hands. And if I think I can do a good job with it, that's my goal every day.
So, how did you get started, and what made you want to go on this journey we call acting?
Just from a young age, and I'm sure that's the typical answer. I'm sure a lot of actors are just saying, I don't know, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to do this, and I think that's common in our profession because I think it's a calling. It's it's something that us wonderfully crazy people kind of need to do. I think if we're really motivated to do it. Um, yeah, just been performing since I was a little kid, and that includes voices, though I didn't really see that as its own potential career path until quite recently, by comparison. I always knew I wanted to perform to some capacity. I was always dressing up as a little kid, and whenever I'd play with Legos or anything, I'd create backstories for these these little figurines and voices for them, and they had to be just right. They had to be the way that I wanted them, and heard them in my head. So I've always just been trying to entertain myself as an only child and anyone around me who I could make laugh. So that's what motivates me to want to be a performer, I guess, to this day. And so that's where it all started. And I could go on about the different training I've had and whatever, but that's been my path. That's what brought me to LA, and hopefully what positioned me for the sort of right place, right time of the Rick role.
And was voiceover something like you wanted to pursue, or did you just go into LA because you wanted to do on camera, and then voiceover was just something you stumbled upon?
Yeah, and I don't know that it was stumbled upon. I think it was that I don't know why I avoided it for so long because I did come out here for primarily on camera, and sort of thought of myself as as just actor, but capital A actor. I can voiceover is probably part of it, but if I'm an actor, that's I don't want to limit myself, pigeonhole myself. I'm sure there was some of that mentality coming out here, and also just the sort of in trying to keep my eyes on the prize of what I thought was success as an actor, which meant on camera for me. Um, it was I think I maybe limited myself for the first couple years that I was out here, um, not necessarily seeing something that I would do as a hobby or a party trick, voices, as a potential career pursuit. Um, so I've this is my 11th year in LA, and I've only really been pursuing VO for maybe half that time seriously, and obviously this has panned out. This has been good, and I had some other success before the Rick opportunity came up. It's just there's a lot of voice work that is unsung, so to speak, where you wouldn't necessarily get these major credits, or people wouldn't necessarily know you or your voice or your name. But there's tons of work out there in terms of voice matching and even just scratching and temping and things like that. That just I think I was able to hone my skill set and get better equipment while doing those things. Um, and it was kind of what got me my start, but it was also what showed it kind of illuminated a path forward for me, because when those opportunities came up, even though they weren't, headline making, they were things that gave me experience with copy or with different characters or with voice matching. And so for several years I had this sort of boot camp in VO that was loving me back as an actor as well. And so I just decided, hey, this is part of me, part of who I am. It's part of the career path, and it just kind of worked out, and I'm very grateful.
And what do you love and hate about what you do?
Well, I love what I do. I mean, I think what I love most, the rush for me, it's akin to when you tell a really good joke at a party or in front of a group of friends, and everybody, you get this great laugh out of everybody. It's addictive, right? It's this rush of endorphins or whatever it is, making people happy. And so I get that sort of thrill from performance, and it's not that I'm necessarily doing it to get a reaction out of the audience, but if I know that something I've done as an actor has been received well, it could be a funny line in a voice, again, at a party that makes somebody giggle, or it could be a stage performance, or someone say, hey, I really like that. That was a really funny sketch you did. Something like that. Just that's what motivates me. I just love it. I love entertaining people. Um, what I hate, I mean, I don't know that there's anything that I hate about the work that I do in terms of the acting and the voice stuff. I really do love it. There's of course frustrations that every actor has, roadblocks that everybody comes up against, and the struggles that we all have as artists, particularly making a move to Los Angeles and trying to make it. There's definitely things that I don't love about the business side of things, for instance, or and those are more sort of big picture things I don't, things I think we could change and do better about in the world. That that's where I take out my frustration. Um, but it would probably any of the negatives really just kind of fall on the sort of reality of world we live in type stuff. I really love what I do.
Yeah, because if my biggest takeaway from 2023, was that being an actor isn't a guarantee, especially with the strikes and all that nonsense that went on with,
Yeah.
with just in general. I feel like, if you want to be an actor, I feel like you have to be passionate and crazy enough to do it. Like you have to be crazy. You have to be out of your mind to want to pursue this.
Oh yeah, there's a level of acceptable insanity that I think you have to admit to and just and embrace to have a career in the arts. Because yeah, it's not a wise career choice. There's no there the odds are insane. And there were times that I wanted to walk away from what I do, just with frustrations with how it was panning out, not because I didn't love what I was doing. Um, I don't know that I could ever give up the craft, or just being silly with voices and stuff. But yeah, I mean, and I think it's a rite of passage that you have to come up against those challenges. I think as an artist, I reject the notion that you have to sit in and wallow in the sort of suffering and the sort of starving artist mentality. That gets into a whole other kind of psychology we don't need to. But yeah, but I do think that it should inform any career in the arts that um, that you do have to struggle a little bit, and because it's inevitable, and how you overcome that, how you take care of yourself through that, is that's a lifelong process. So and all very important to stay healthy when you move forward to it, so that you don't go into the bad type of crazy, and totally lose your mind doing this.
Yeah, I know. It's like I say this a lot, like, It's great. What you guys do is great, but no role is worth killing yourself over.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, there's definitely in the moments when I had sort of, okay, is this really the right path for me? It was a way for me to kind of step back and just take a look and see, okay, what do I need to do to take care of myself to move forward? That's so important. Self care as an artist is it can't be understated. And this is something I've found talking to many fellow artists and actors my whole life. And the best advice that I've gotten throughout the years has always been to take care of yourself as a person, and take care of the instrument, the body itself as well. You really have to take care because it's a demanding art form, and when there's success, it's demanding too. When you're firing on all cylinders and you're doing 8 shows a week, it's taking a lot out of you physically and emotionally if you're working correctly. So you have to make sure that as an artist, you know how to navigate your own work to protect yourself and be able to sustain. For me, lately with Rick, that's translated into how do I physically keep my voice in shape to sustain and be able to go on for 100 years, Rick and Morty forever. So that's the goal.
You mentioned the best advice. Now I'm curious, like, what was the worst piece of advice you've ever been given as an actor?
Oh man, there is so much. I mean, everybody wants to give their 2 cents, right? And I've been fortunate in sort of my path to have had some really great mentors and teachers, and credit to them is so due for kind of giving me nuggets of wisdom along the way that I think are really good waypoints for actors. Um, Before I get to the worst, I would say that the best advice that I ever got um, would be from Howard Fine, who was my coach and teacher for many years. I worked at a studio and everything, so that was where I did a lot of my training here in LA. He said very early on, he said if, and he said this to the whole class, it wasn't just to me, but it was, if doing anything else makes you happy, do that. If only doing this makes you happy, then do this and don't take no for an answer. And I think that just supplies the right kind of perspective and, backdoor if you need it, or, motivation to move forward in a healthy way. Um, so that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I was driving at in my last answer. Howard said it better than I did. Um, the worst advice I've ever gotten as an actor, I was once told by a prominent casting director that to use more colors after an audition. I went and did a monologue for a pretty big theater company, and the note was, "Yeah, I think you could maybe just try using more colors next time." So I don't know whether this casting director or many casting directors who might give that note are confused as to whether we're actors or painters, but it's that's one of those actor notes that you hear and then you have to translate into something that you can actually do, because I don't know how you act the color yellow, but that was a real note that I got, and I'd heard those notes were given and then I didn't believe it until it actually happened to me. So it just becomes an act of translation then for the actor to take any advice that you have and try to make it serve you. When I first moved to LA, I was told, "Oh, you're coming out here to act? Okay, and you just want to be an actor? Okay, well, learn food service." And it can seem like a snub at that point, especially to someone in your young 20s moving out here with all the opportunity before you, to just be told, "All right, well, get ready to wait tables." And there's nothing wrong with waiting tables. And however you sustain yourself and support yourself to pursue what you love, great. But to get that advice is like, all right, well, that's not, come on. Talk to me about what I can do as an artist. That's what you're hungry for when you first get out here is advice that can really feed your soul. Um, Maybe that motivated me in some way, but I also think that there's just a way that people talk to actors. Everybody wants to direct, I don't know.
That's such a condescending thing to say to someone. It's like, oh, you want to be an actor? Don't get your hopes up. Go wait some frickin' tables or something. It's
Or
like,
or practical. And I try to, because you're right, it does seem condescending on its face, and I think I probably took it that way when I first heard it. But I also think it's not impractical because there is a reality to LA's expensive. You're going to need a day job. Don't expect it to happen overnight. Yeah, work at what you want to do, but not have a backup or give it up entirely already, but rather have a plan. The way I like to hear that is build a life, and the work will come. And that's advice if I'm qualified to give any advice that I've given to friends, but that I would give to your wider audience too. Is that anybody wanting to do this, wanting to move to another city to do this? I would just say the most important thing is to be a person first, have a life, um, get involved in your community. Pick up a hobby, start try playing a sport, something like that. Have routines, establish a life where you live, where you're going to work, and have things that feed you and your soul that aren't just the pursuit of something that has no guarantees. Because you need to be able to sustain yourself throughout that. So maybe that's the kernel of wisdom that came from that condescending line, but yeah, you have to have a life in place in order for I think to thrive as an artist. Um, I'll say, my major opportunity didn't come along until after I got married. So maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know, just energetically, if you believe in that thing.
No, I agree with you because I've heard this a lot. Like I remember listening to an interview with Jennifer Hale, and she said like one of the best pieces of advice she was ever given was like, "Oh, do you want to be an actor? Get a hobby." Because if
Hmm.
you don't have a hobby and you don't have that thing that keeps you busy, that keeps you motivated, that keeps your brain working, how are you going to get better at your craft? You know?
Absolutely. No, yeah, you're spot on with that. It reminds me of an Alan Rickman quote, which I would butcher if I tried to get right, but the essence of it was, see art, go to museums, meet people, watch people, go out, experience life, because that's what actors do. It's all the study of humans, human behavior, and history. And my coach Howard would also say, today's headlines are tomorrow's screenplays. So read the news, be involved, be involved in the world around you, because that's what any script is going to have in it. And it doesn't matter how fantastical the script is. I mean, I'll tell you, whenever I get a script for my show, there's reference from the very title. There's pop culture references. There's references not just to itself, but it's so layered. The writing is so smart on Rick and Morty, that I have a whole bunch of homework of stuff to look up every time I read a new episode, because there's references, subtle references. Um, there's visual gags that the audience gets, I'm sure, in the animation, but there's also just one-liners and things that you might not even think are references, um, and really obscure ones too. I think the end of season 7 there was an obscure reference in Fear No Mort, where to a play that I had read in college, but that hardly anybody's ever heard of if they're not in the theater world, called 3 Days of Rain. But it's there's a lot of real humor if you know the play and you know the history of the play. So it's that's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, have a life.
So, speaking of Rick and Morty, how did you get involved with that show? And was Rick the only character you auditioned for, or did you audition for other characters?
Ah, so I auditioned. There was the roles, the breakdowns were put out to pretty much the whole industry. They did at least two very large, extensive, nationwide, worldwide searches. Um, for me, it was about a 6 month process of auditioning, and so that meant a lot of waiting in between, but many different sessions. So there was the initial submission, and then the initial callback, and then meet with the producers, and then wait, and then do that again, and then so there was a whole. This is a very extensive process. It's not typical for most roles that an actor will audition for. Um, Initially, I'd submitted for and auditioned for and was heard for both Rick and Morty. And that might have been how the initial search went. I'm not really sure what their timeline was for it, but I read for both, made it, I thought, pretty far into the process for both. And then at some point it was communicated that, the ultimate casting decision will be to have two actors no matter what, which I think is so smart. and I'm so grateful for, because these are demanding roles, and it also um, it is having Harry take on Morty, and being a sort of a partner and a new really great friend in this process. Um, I just think that as the years go, this is my fortune teller hat. I just feel as though it's going to open up more possibilities for us as actors, and hopefully for the whole creative team, to have two people playing these roles and having their unique perspectives and vocal qualities. I'm just hoping that it's only going to provide more possibilities for the show. Because I think Harry's great. I love what he's doing with Morty, and I believe he also read for both roles initially, and so leave it to the producers to figure out what they wanted to hear, what they were hearing through the process. But it's great that we have two actors for these two iconic roles. I think that's only right, just for where the show's headed and the possibilities that lay before us.
While I was doing my research, I know that the showrunners put you guys through the ringer, that they gave you like a bunch of scenes to reenact
Sure,
and just to see how you guys would get a feel of the characters, I guess.
sure, yeah.
So, so I was just wondering, like, what was that like? Like doing scenes that, as a fan of the show, you already know, and
Mhm.
you're like, oh man, I already know this. Like, was there pressure going into that, or you're like, oh shit, man, now they're like, now I gotta really step up my game if I want this.
Yeah, both. I think you nailed it. I think there's just both of those. You go back and forth sometimes in the same minute, thinking, "Yeah, man, I got this. I got this voice in the bag." To, "Oh man, this is demanding a lot. I don't know if I could do this." It's back and forth between confidence and imposter syndrome. Um, for the audition process, I'm saying, it's the there were definitely a few lines, because they had us do some full scenes for the audition process, um, that were they had some do some stuff at certain points. It was stuff that had already aired, stuff that we knew that we could replicate the voice of, and then other stuff later on in the process was stuff that no one had seen, that was um, you know, for all intents and purposes, we didn't know if it was just for the audition or if it was actually something that was going to be in the next season. But there were extreme situations in both where that were pushing our limits and our range. Not to the point of hurting ourselves vocally, but to see, okay, well, what, where could we go with this character, with this actor, just because it's not in this script. And I think that's probably what was part of their search, probably what they've said when they've talked about the process. But from our perspective, it was just, oh yeah. I think the realization for me was, this is no longer a party trick. This voice that I can do is no longer an impression. What's required at this level is much more precise, much more technically involved, and requires more care, and there's going to be more input. There's going to be more people that are saying, I heard you a little off here, and that's to help. And so I think that the realization for me was that what got me in the door initially wasn't going to take me over the finish line. And so I had to step up my game for sure. I think by the end of the process, I was learning what that was, and still learning what it takes, to sustain this. And but we're having a ball.
You had that realization point where it's like, oh, they don't want a sound alike. They want Rick Sanchez, and I have to be Rick Sanchez.
Yeah, and I mean the sound matching is definitely a big part of it, because it's an iconic sound, an iconic voice. Which isn't to say that, as the character, as the story evolves, as we all grow with these characters for the next, hopefully, crossing my fingers, I don't know, hopefully, 10 seasons and beyond. Um, hopefully the I mean, there's going to be different situations Rick's put in. It's gonna take him vocally in different directions. Hopefully, there's going to be some creative interpretation and leeway there that doesn't stray from the character. So it's one thing to do an impersonation of a voice, to do a sound, to sound like something that already exists, but then to create a similar sound that's true to the character moving forward, I think is where the work is. You actually said it better than I did. I'm gonna stop rambling.
And do you have any favorite Rick quotes from season 7?
I think the opening line to the spaghetti episode is become a mainstay in my house. So now every time I cook, it's "Are you who's ready for Rick's famous spaghetti?" I just can't help myself. Um, excuse me. There's a lot of really great lines that I mean again the writing. It's all credit to the writers. Um, there were a lot of really funny ones in the clip show episode that I kept cracking up during. I love the leg Rick stuff. That was really fun. Put my spin on that. And then I think I don't know. It's as a fan. I when I watch it now, I'm also I really get a kick out of what Harry's work is and what he's doing with certain lines. There's some lines in the clip show, the Observer episode. Um, where he's get lost, you piece of shit, and bye, and he's just got this amazing inflection that I think has brought some great life to Morty, and so I guess my answer is some of my favorite lines are, are said by other characters, but yeah, I mean. Just to warm up, I do wubba lubba dub dub. I mean, how can you not? How can you not? Give a little wubba lubba dub dub to get in the character's mindset. It's essential.
I think some of my favorite quotes from season 7 are possession is nine tenths of my ass, and stop, that's silly, stop being a space Mormon.
Don't be a space Mormon. Yeah, that was really funny. That was one of those lines we said. Are we sure we can say that? We don't want to. It's just one of those. Who are we offending today? Um, I'm not giving you your spaghettis as names is really good. Um, and I think, and again, I'll just have to praise Heather Ann Campbell because just her writing is just it's so funny. And that same episode, Choo Choo Plane, when I'm here, I'm having Morty taste the spaghetti sauce. Say, Choo Choo Plane. It's just so funny. Um, that cracked me up every time I read it.
Well, and another thing that I love about the clip show episode was that someone pointed out that Rick did actually turn himself into a leg twice because one time he's the right leg and then the other time he's the left leg. So we were robbed
Yeah.
of two leg Rick episodes.
You gotta have both, right? You gotta have the pair. So that's it's complete the set. Um, Yeah, that would be really funny. I'm waiting to see Leg Rick on the shelves. I mean, I'm hoping that's something that gets picked up and circulated. I'm hoping we see Leg Rick out in the world. We'd certainly see Pickle Rick out there. I think it'd be great to see some leg rips. Maybe a leg lamp Rick. You know how like the leg lamp from Christmas Story could be a great holiday gag gift. You do a leg lamp Rick, and then you could sell twice as much if you sell the right and the left. So I think that's a good point there.
But I think like the episode that legitimately made me laugh was the Pope episode, where every time he goes up to the final battle, he screams out "Pope," and I think the line that made me laugh so hard was the Pope does not have a name, so Rick just says it's over the Pope, and it's just the funniest thing. I don't know what it is about that line. It's over the Pope.
I love that one too. I'm so glad you liked it. It's yeah, so subtle, but yeah. The Pope. So, I'm the Pope is another good one. Yeah, it's
Oh, and I think the part that made me laugh was the ending where like the Rick clone becomes the new pope and he just goes, he's the
I'll tell you, I had a blast doing that. You know what? I might amend my earlier answer to say that some of my favorite recordings were just the gibberish that I did for the mindless Rick running around in that episode. We had a blast with that. And our showrunner Scott Martyr, who also wrote that episode, he directs a lot of my sessions, and so we kind of figured that out on the fly, just sort of what that guy's going to sound like, and we just had a ball. Just just flapping around. I wish there had been a camera on in the booth that day for that recording because yeah, that was funny. Uh, I'm
I,
glad you liked it.
I want a DLC of like because in multiverses they do DLC for like different costumes. I want a Pope Rick for that game, but it's just every time you pick him, he just starts spouting gibberish. I just want that. I want
Oh
that so
man,
much.
I shudder at the thought of what that recording session would be. It'd be, it'd be vocally demanding, but a lot of fun. I agree with you. I don't know that I have any power over that, but if they're listening to this podcast, the people want Pope Rick. Um, so I yeah, that'd be really fun.
And speaking of like Brick's voice, like was it tough keeping that voice going for an average session?
The team's been really amazing in terms of how they've prioritized vocal health, and I'm sure just yeah, among the many voice actor guests you've had over your many episodes, I would say, it's any number of them would agree that that's a rare thing to find, where you really get an actor's director in a session, or you get a lot of people. I don't mean to paint a bleak picture of the industry. I just mean to say that it's you're extra grateful as an actor when you have a team that really cares about not taking advantage of you or pushing you to a limit where you're hurting yourself. So I would say that the Rick and Morty team has been very on top of vocal health, making sure that we're not overextending, and even in the audition process, they had us working with a great vocal coach, Amy Chapman, and she's incredible in terms of keeping us true to the characters, to the sound that they want, and to making sure that we're not going to hurt ourselves, and giving us ways to new ways to discover the voice in ourselves as well. So it's opening up vocal possibilities for the characters as we learn as actors different ways to work. So that's really cool too. Can I sustain for a whole session? Yeah, there's tricks and things. I mean, I probably go through a bottle of honey a week if I'm in recording sessions, but there's just there's ways you take care of yourself, and you don't push it too long. Um, I think the first 10 minutes of any session and the last 20 minutes of any session, maybe not everything that you say is gold on the first take. But then there's definitely a sweet spot where, we're in the pocket, we're warm, we're playing, we're doing all kinds of different takes and on the lines, the directors, we're having fun, we're bouncing ideas back and forth, maybe a few burps, maybe some improv. And, for a couple hours at a time, with a break here and there, that's doable. Um, but it's definitely a harsh voice, and definitely one that you don't want to do lightly. So you'll see I'm getting over a cold now. You'll see I'm a little under the weather today. So if I'm not going full fledged into into Rick screaming during the podcast, you'll forgive me. But that's part of it. Is just not to push the limits.
And out of all the stuff you've done for season 7 so far, which part or scene was the most difficult and why?
Mm. At any given point during recording season 7, there were definitely some challenges, unique challenges, happy challenges, just because of the nature of the work and what this job was, stepping into the role, um, and the tight timeline that we had. But I think that the moments that were, I think the most vocally demanding, um, acting wise, the most challenging and demanding of me as an artist, and also what became sort of a turning point in my confidence in taking over the role would be in Unmort Rickon, um, which is our fifth episode of season 7, and there's without giving anything away for anybody who hasn't seen it, brings back some of our villains from the canon, and also showcases a pretty big battle montage, lots of violence, lots of beating ups, just a very vocally demanding episode. A lot of Ricks are seen. So there's different Rick characters that have each a different cadence, different voice, and then of course we see Rick Prime, and Rick Prime has his own difference with our Rick, and so getting inside of the different iterations of Rick is its own challenge, and then to fight as them was also, I think, the most vocally demanding. There were all kinds of tricks of the trade used in terms of getting the right sound for blood in my mouth, or after I'd been hit a couple times, what that sounds like, and so patting my cheeks with cotton balls and guzzling honey, and chewing on fruit leather and spitting that out, and all kinds of things to get the right sound, um, while also yelling and acting and protecting the voice, and trying to also serve the writing in that moment, which was a very climactic moment for our characters. um, I'm very proud of that and how it turned out. It took a lot of work. It was a moment just as an actor for me. I'll just kind of be a little vulnerable here, where it's easy to think, gee, am I up to the task? And then when the team was happy with what we got and how it sounded, how the final episode turned out, it just sort of became a wow, okay, I can be proud of that work. Like, I was part of that team. That was really cool. I didn't know I could do that. And I hope that just serves to um, you know, to open up more possibilities for what's possible, the character in the future.
I think the scene to me that really got to me, and I think you probably you're probably sick of hearing about this, was the final scene between Rick and Rick Prime.
Hmm.
And I remember watching that for the first time and just being like, he did it. Like, he nailed both characters, and it was just such an emotionally powerful scene because yeah, you hate you made Rick Prime more hateable than he already was, first of all, which, congratulations on that. But also what makes that scene so heart-wrenching is that when Rick's beating him up, he's not doing like he's genuinely frustrated and angry, and he says, like, when Prime tells him, like, what would your life be without me, and he says, let's find out. That got to me. That really got to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. That was the goal. Was to get that. I'll never get sick of hearing that, because that means that the audience is responding to our work, to our episode, which I think we're all very proud of. That was the goal, and so if that's your takeaway, yeah, no, thank you for saying that. Um, it's a very emotionally demanding episode. It poses a lot of questions to the audience too. That last montage lets you reflect on it. Um, and yeah, I think what it does is it opens the door for any number of possibilities where Rick can go now, in his life, post vengeance violence episode. um, but it also was a real moment of vulnerability for him to say, you know what, I'm flying without a net now. Here's a guy who always has a plan and 17 backups and 18 gadgets in his arm to deal with whatever situation. And you know what? I don't know what's going to happen after this, but I'm doing it. And I mean, that kind of emotional commitment from a character who has not been known to show his emotions, or to be emotionally available and mature. um yeah, I mean, it's a big moment, and a lot of really fun work as an actor to pick up that script and really see what's underneath all that. So if any of that came across in the final, I'm grateful. I love hearing that, and thank you again.
Also, someone pointed out that if you look closely during the final scene, when Rick leaves, he's actually crying, and that's like, oh man, they those writers, man, they know how to tug at your heartstrings.
Absolutely. No, I mean, look, to work with this team, um, just as a fan, it's writing and it's animation that I've revered for years. So to be part of that team, see how it all works, but just, yeah, real credit to them. Um, it's a heck of an episode to drop in the middle of a season too. So it's if anybody listening hasn't caught up on season 7, just get ready, because that episode 5 is a real fun one. Um, yeah.
I also love the what was it, the Bruce Willis style Rick, where he's like, he killed my wife. I don't know, it makes me laugh.
That was a fun one. Yeah, we played with that one a little bit. I think we actually came back to doing. We wanted him more grizzled. Like, it was initially, I think, a milder version, and then it came back. And the James Bond one, in that same scene. The James Bond Rick was not necessarily spot on British when we first did it. I just kind of played with the accent because I like accents, and so I to do Rick as a different accent was fun for me, just to kind of riff on. And they said, "Oh, wait, let's do let's go with that. Let's hear that." Um, so that's been fun too, is to kind of put my own spin on different Ricks. I hope in future seasons we see more Citadel type episodes where it kind of showcases both Harry and I in more in our range in the characters, as more than just our two main Rick and Mortys.
Also, I want to mention, like, before I move on, like, another one of my favorite lines was when during the opening montage with evil Rick and Morty, they walk into the Citadel, and the guard Rick is like, "An eye patch? You know how we feel about pirates."
Yeah, it's a great callback. Um, yeah, that was fun. Yeah, gee, again, it makes me want to play in the sandbox that our creators have created. With all these different iterations of the characters. There's just limitless possibilities with the different Ricks and different Mortys we can meet. So I'm excited for those. Those whenever we see like an episode that has those different versions popping up, I just get so excited. Um, because it's just more fun work as an actor. One of the games I used to just play just as a fun, thing, just with a friend or with my wife and I do this sometimes, where I'll say, all right, I'll do, give me a voice of a celebrity and then a crazy situation, that I would be in, Hugh Grant shopping for greeting cards, or it's sort of just like a Mad Lib of just, here, put you on the spot. Can you do this impression on demand? And that's just a fun game that I like to play because it keeps me on my toes. And then there was really no practical way for me to use that until stepping into the role of Rick, where now it's like, okay, you're Rick Sanchez, but you're also a cowboy, or whatever it is. So that's fun.
And have you gotten a chance to meet any of your other fellow castmates?
Yes, and I'm so glad. There's such a great sense of ensemble, and collaboration on this show that I'm just I'm again kissing the ground that I walk on because it's a great opportunity. Harry, who has stepped into the role of Morty, has become a really close friend. Really love this guy. I love his work, and we just we've become fast friends, and so we've gotten together. You know, Before he moved out here, we would link up when he was visiting LA. Um, and then now that he's moved out here, we're hanging out. We're just buds now, and we've gotten to start to travel a little bit because we're starting to do some conventions with our fellow castmates. What I want to say also is just the legacy cast, those who have been in the roles and with the show for its 10 plus years. Spencer Grammer, Sarah Chalk, Chris Parnell. These are voices that I've looked up to and admired for years. I've loved their work. I love these people as actors, as people, and I'm just, to be I'm honored to be on the same cast as them, and they've been really welcoming to us as well, which that's not always the case, and they're certainly under no obligation to be, but they've been incredibly supportive, and so these actors that I've looked up to, whose work I've admired and laughed at for years, to be now playing with them and to know them and to be part of this journey with them has been really, really cool. Can't say enough nice things about each one of them. And I'm just, again, honored and grateful to be working with them. I'm glad we have the opportunity. We don't record together. That's a question we get a lot, which is that we're not actually, some shows do this. We're not actually in the booth together when we're recording. So we always record in isolation, which means the actors alone, but we still have everybody on staff. We have our producers and our sound engineers and our showrunner and our directors, and like there's people there. I'm not just doing this. I'm not doing this from where I'm right now in my home studio. We do the work in studio as a team, but the actors are always separate, and so sometimes our only opportunity to see one another is at those conventions or at a production event. Some of us play on a softball team. That's pretty fun. So that's provided a chance for us to be social and get to know one another.
Have you gotten a chance to meet Keith David yet? That's what I want to know.
I haven't, and I'm such a fan, and I'm trying not to make a big deal out of it because I don't want to but because I just imagine it'll also happen at some point. The recording for the third episode of season 7 was already done. The other actors had already done their work by the time I recorded Rick for that, so there was no chance of bumping into each other at the studio at that point. But man, I mean, I'm such a fan of his legendary voice, and I'm awaiting the day when I can meet him and tell him that. But even just to be on the same show as again as these these voices that I've looked up to and revered. I mean, just the utility cast of Rick and Morty as well. Not even just the Smith family, but you've got I mean you've got Tom Kenny, you've got Kari, you've got these amazing, iconic, prolific voice actors on this show that bring it to life each week, and yeah, so just to be counted among them is it's a dream come true. So I'll let you know if and when I meet Keith David. I think it would be great.
Because every time I talk to someone, they're like, one of my favorite roles is Keith David on as the president in Rick and Morty, and I'm like,
Mm.
yes, that is a good answer.
I don't know about you. I think we need more of that. I think we need more of that character. I would welcome it. I would welcome more president episodes. I would welcome seeing a lot more of that and a lot more of Keith on the show.
No, I think I said this on Twitter when they said that they were going to recast Rick and Morty. I'm like, you know what? Maybe they should just kill them off and just have the president be the main character. That'd be a lot better.
Hey, I'm glad they didn't do that, but I can see where you're coming from. Why not have both? Why not have more of the president and Rick and Morty, 100 years forever. But yeah, it's so much of this is and I've found this a lot in the VO community. There's just a lot of support. I mean, it's like anything. I'm not trying to paint just a rosy picture of everything, but by and large, and particularly in our industry, I think it's unique in this way, in that there's just a lot more support I've found among voice actors, and just kind of reverence for each other and support, and just lifting each other up, and that's just the sort of thing where I hope to continue that. Anytime anybody says to me, gee, I've been thinking about putting together a voice reel, I'm like, yeah, do it. Just absolutely do it. You should go for it. I don't care if they have a similar voice to me or whatever. It's not about competition at that point. Yeah, there's so much to be done. That yeah, let's do that. And in this world of AI that we're living in, the more human voices we have participating, hey, I'm all for it, man.
Yeah, all I'll say about AI is that, you can complain, you can not like the new voices all you want, but at least they cast a human as Rick and Morty. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
At the very least, I am alive. I have a pulse. Yeah.
So, you also do Rick on multiverses. I'm kind of curious, like, how did that whole thing come about? Because I would imagine that came later, right? That wasn't recorded with season 7.
Correct. Yes. So, and we actually, I'm thinking of the timeline. I think yeah, we recorded that earlier this year. So season 7 was already out and being enjoyed on various platforms that you can watch on now. Um, it, and then we got the news about multiverses, and so I think it was just sort of a happy timing thing where multiverses was doing its own revamp, and coming out of its beta, and doing all of its you know they were building the game out, and bringing it back, and it just so happened that we have just been announced as these roles. So I think it just made sense, as we are the roles on the show, just to bring us into the family of multiverses. Um, I think that, and this is just me talking, I think that the goal for multiverses, just from a player standpoint now, was to really bring these characters to life as you're playing them. So if specific characters have very specific lines for interacting with one another, which I think is really cool. It's something that you don't get with a lot of these types of games, and so it makes the experience pretty unique, and puts the player in the driver's seat for a lot of it, because you get to customize so much, and then down to the individual match, you'll hear different things based on who's playing each other. So it's really based on the user's decisions and everybody's different fandoms. And so it's kind of a really cool way to bring all these fun characters together. And so I think our involvement was just the product of us being the roles on the show at the same time that they were, bringing multiverses to market. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I would love to see Rick and Morty in all kinds of properties and all kinds of games. So, who's to say we shouldn't be in the next, the next Batman video games, the next standalones, or or anything else. I mean, I'd love to see us everywhere. I'm happy to do games. So fun.
And was it difficult, like maintaining Rick's voice for that? Because there's a lot more efforts because it's a fighting game as opposed to the show.
Yeah, there were definitely some different challenges, different demands. And what was interesting was because it was a different team that recorded the game than records the show. Um, I guess yeah, and I'm also just making sure I'm not straying into any territory I can't talk about, proprietary stuff. Um, but yeah, there's definitely there was a different level of Rick, a more heightened version of Rick throughout the recording sessions for the game, just because it is pretty much all fighting. So whereas your average Rick and Morty episode might have more conversational Rick, um, this one was definitely more focused on making the energy and the action match what was going to be on the screen. So a different kind of challenge and a different sometimes a different sound, but it just makes the character bigger, just to explore those different ways. And I still got to burp. I got to swear a lot. So if you turn swears on in MultiVersus, you can hear all kinds of other voice lines as well. It opens up a whole other library, so that's kind of fun. It was really cool to see how they did this game, and again, a great team, great direction, great engineers that were very supportive, and again, conscious of the vocal strain, because I think it's become apparent that not all voices are alike, and that video games can be pretty demanding and rough on the voice.
And what are some of your favorite lines from Multiverses?
Oh my goodness. I think there's a really funny line from the trailer, that and there's similar ones in the game itself if you're playing. There's a really funny one from the trailer where he's running through the Batcave and he shouts at Batman but calls him Bruce, which I just think is so funny. That Rick would not only portal into the Batcave, but then just being all knowing, yeah, of course he knows it's Bruce Wayne, duh. And Batman's left kind of in the background. You can imagine just like, who was that guy who got into the Batcave, and how does he know who I am? It's just such a quick moment in the trailer, but I got a kick out of it. And in the game, this is kind of what I was talking about, is that they scripted so many moments where there are direct interactions between specific characters. So there's plenty of lines that I recorded for Rick where he's calling out Batman as Bruce, or calling Bruce out for being kind of a spoiled billionaire, where he's making fun of Shaggy for being a hippie. So I think the things that tickle me most were the ones that are in direct reference to other properties, because it breaks the fourth wall as well in the way that our show does. So it's true to the character, and it's just funny. Um, but yeah, there's a couple good burps in there that were fun to record as well.
I think one of my favorite lines was, you mentioned Shaggy. And one of my favorite lines is, seriously, were hippies ever cool where you're from?
That's so funny. Um, oh man, yeah, I'm trying to think. As I've been playing, because I'm a gamer too, so I've been playing multiverses. I've actually been playing multiverses with Harry, as our characters. It's been kind of fun to jump in and do that. Maybe if you're listening, jump onto multiverses. It's free. You might end up playing with one of us, as our characters. See if you can find us. But just the sort of like, okay, whoa, that was intense. All right, gotta turn it up. Gotta turn it up a notch now. Oh, did you think you could kill me? Those little quips. It's very surreal to be playing a video game and hear lines that I've recorded. I will say.
I think one of my favorite lines as well is like when you're playing Rick against Rick, he's like, "Ha, take that, me." I don't know why that makes me laugh.
Yes. Yeah, there's one. I haven't unlocked it in the game yet, but I remember recording something like, "Oh, he must be from the handsome dimension." So it just fun self-referential stuff there. Yeah.
So I take, are you a Rick main, or are you, or is there another character you're a main on Multiverses?
I am a Rick main. I mean, come on, how could I not be? But I was quick to unlock Morty as well, and I'm also a big Superman fan, so I made sure to get Superman, and I've played a little bit as Superman as well. But there's great characters, and I feel like every time I log in, there's more options there. And I'm and just without saying anything more, I'm sure there's going to be more to come. So if you played, maybe tried it out, and it was it didn't have everybody that you were looking for, maybe there's going to be more characters in the future. You never know. Keep playing; it's fun. Um, I do main as Rick, which is challenging. It's not an easy character, but I've found that the toughest characters to go up against, Arya, Wonder Woman, those there's some great characters in that game. I was really cool. It was really cool to see the Iron Giant so prominently featured too, because that was such a favorite movie of mine as a kid. Um, it was just what a great concept for a game. To be a part of it again, I'm honored. It's awesome.
Because I'm a Rick main as well. I mean, he's not an easy character to play, but he's a lot of
Yeah.
fun, and I love that the go get Sanchez skis is an attack that you can do in this game.
Yes, the
I
skate
love
boots.
that.
That's awesome. My favorite move is probably the up finishing move with the Mega Seed. I think that's just so OP. I hope they don't change it, but because I love it. But I love that one too. Great great reference to early Rick and Morty as well.
One of the things I kind of I'm bummed out that they took out was in the beta when you pick two different Ricks, like the other Rick is evil Rick, and I'm like, oh man, I wish
Mm,
that they had kept that. But it's not in the final game. But oh well.
yeah. And those decisions are so beyond any of the work that I would do. But again, I would just say, it, you know, it's a multiverse, and there's probably going to be great surprises and new things to come. So if you're especially if you're a Rick main, there's probably going to be some exciting releases in the future. And I'm excited to keep playing. I'll say that.
Because with Rick, like there are different versions of Rick, and like I said, this game does like a lot of costumes. And I'm pretty sure
Hmm.
that they'd be foolish not to implement implement that into the game. Especially with all the different costumes that are in the series. I'm just saying.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Hey, I think you're not alone in feeling that way. And one thing I'll say, just generally speaking, in my transition from just fan to working on, behind the scenes on these things, is just that it's, you know, the, there's the creative forces that be on these projects are very tuned in to what would be cool to see, in that respect. So I'm hopeful for what we might see in the future, and I would love, I mean, if this game really, continues to grow, I'd love to get that call to go in and record even more. Maybe there's just even more possibilities. As there's more Rick and Morty coming, there will be more opportunities to, explore those, the skins in the game and the voice lines. There might be more stuff that they want to bring in. So hey, I'm open to it.
You know what I would love to see, and they'll never do this because I'm pretty sure he'd be too OP. I would love to see Ricky as a playable character. I don't know why that'd be so funny to me.
I'd love to see Jariki as a playable character. I'd love to see him as a Funko. I think that would just be so fun. I mean, that was the artwork on that episode. That was actually the first episode that I recorded. So that's always going to hold a very special place in my heart, just for season 7, because that was where we began, for my journey as Rick. Was right into an episode where Rick is also half not himself. So that was, you asked me earlier about challenges for season 7. That might have been one of them. Um, but yeah, that was something that we started working on in testing sessions, and then was my first episode to record. So, um, I will always have a soft spot for Jariki. Uh, and that would be fun too, to bring Chris into the multiverse too. That'd be cool, because we would do our double voice. That would be really fun.
I love how he calls I love how he calls Beth daughter wife. I don't know why that's
All right.
funny to me, but it's
Yeah.
just so funny.
So good. There's some great one-liners from that episode. Uh, yeah. Do you not hear the symphony of atoms exploding in space? Or what was it? Oof, I've been on that website. That's probably my favorite from the episode. Am I talking to my dad or my husband? Oof, I've been on that website. That was a good one from that episode.
Oh, the Conehead death was really creative. I was like, okay. Okay.
I'll tell you, that scream, from that moment was one of the early on put us through the ringer moments. That was one of the intense screams that they had us experiment with. I think what ended up in the episode was also kind of slowed down because it's a slow mo moment. So it probably wasn't as extreme as we went in the audition, but it was definitely the moment that they could say, okay, we will go a little bigger with that. A little bigger, longer scream with that. Okay, get a little more guttural with that. And it was one of those that we really took it to the limits. So again, that whole episode, just because it was some of the first newer material that I'd tackled, always a special place in my heart for sure.
The moment I saw that, I'm like, okay, someone get Ed Boon on the line and tell him to make Rick the next playable character for Mortal Kombat.
I know. Yeah, he looks like something out of Mortal Kombat with the multiple arms. The Jiriki is very much what was it like? Thinking of the old Mortal Kombat. Was it like Baraka or whatever? It was one of those old
Goro. You're thinking of
Goro.
Goro.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's just this totally wild character. Yeah, it's like something out of Dragon Ball Z or whatever.
I take it like seeing as you're a gamer and a fan of the show, you don't mind listening to yourself, right?
I mean, it's sort of something you have to live with. I mean, there's a lot of people who say, "Oh, I hate the sound of my own voice," or I don't watch my own work." I mean, it's just part of the work at this point. I mean, you have to. You don't necessarily want to be judging yourself every moment of what you're working on. It's good to listen back and make adjustments. I try to, have one ear open while I'm recording, just to kind of be able to judge where I'm at and adjust on the fly if I need to get the right sound. But that's just technical stuff. You kind of have to get used to listening to yourself, and I wouldn't stop watching the show just because I'm in it. But I would say the way in which I listen to these things definitely has shifted. As I take on the job. Um, I might be more critical of myself, but I might also, in saying, gee, did I feel like I could have. I want to take another swing at that. When we're in the recording process, I'll very often ask to do another take, or when we see it in a cut, I'll say, hey, are you guys happy with that, or could I give you something new here? Are we, are too far along, or can I give you something new? And I'm happy to contribute in that way if it's helpful to the team, and sometimes it unlocks, yeah, something that we didn't know we could have gotten in the first session, and so. Um, I'm listening with hopefully a constructive, if not critical ear, but I'm trying to enjoy it. I'm trying to just enjoy MultiVersus as just a gamer if I can. There's just it's delightful to be a part of the process. So you know, it tickles me when to hear myself when I'm rewatching an episode or something. But it's difficult to separate the work from the final product for me, if that makes sense.
Because whenever I ask people this question, they're like, "Oh, I can't stand listening to myself," and I'm like, "Man, that I mean, I get it, but it's kind of disheartening when you're talking to someone who plays an iconic character, and you're like, "Oh, that scene that you did, what was it like?" And it's like, I've never seen it, so I can't talk about it, So it's like,
Yeah.
how can you not see it, Because it's like, it just I don't know how to process it because it's like, like I said with that scene with you and Rick Prime, I thought that was one of the best scenes in the entire series, and I don't know how people how someone who can work on something like that cannot stand listening to themselves. It's like, come on, man,
Mhm.
it's amazing.
And thank you again for saying that. And yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, look, everybody has their own process, and I certainly don't want my answer in deviating from the norm to come across as ego. It's not as if I'm coming home and I'm like listening to recordings of myself all the time. It's just it's part of the occupation, it's part of the job. As far as I see it, if you hated listening to your own voice, being a voice actor would probably get old pretty quick because you have to just any given day you have any number of auditions you have to listen back to, and you have to be able to listen and separate it from, ooh, I didn't like how it didn't like that sound. It's like, I mean, we're all kind of hypercritical of ourselves, right? I mean, you step in front of a mirror, you might not necessarily like how the light's catching you in that moment or how you look on a certain day, and you just sort of have to look past that and say, okay, all right, but is there anything actually wrong with my hair? Do I have actually anything on my face? Okay, it's kind of a similar process. It's like, all right, I may not love listening to myself, especially if it seems like an exercise in vanity, but I have to listen to myself. So how do I do that and separate it from the things that are going to stop me? And how can I listen to myself in a way that's going to be productive? You know, as a voice matcher, though, I have to constantly listen back for the nuances of things. In my first days, in the audition process, let's say for Rick, getting that right, getting my submission tape right, choosing between two almost identical takes, but one's got this, this one thing that could put me over the edge. It was, I mean, I must have recorded all day for my first round of auditions, and then I must have edited for 2 or 3 days because I couldn't decide between two takes. I mean, I need to listen to my voice, but it's in service of the work. It's not just to be like, oh, look at that. It's there's a craft to it, and for me, I'm listening to every little thing that I can. I'm fortunate to have a team of people listening with and for me on Rick and Morty now that we're recording the show, and it's not just an audition. So to take some of that pressure off of me as an actor, it's great. And they've been doing it longer than I have, and they're technically, experts. We got sound engineers, we got directors, we have people who've lived with these characters longer than I have. They're the real experts in listening, so I tend to trust their ear over mine now too. So take some of the pressure off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like, don't be, don't be hypercritical, or don't like, you shouldn't criticize yourself, or, you shouldn't like strive to get better, because like, if you're not striving to get better, then what are you doing this for? Even as
Right.
someone who, as someone who, records and edits a lot of podcasts, I have to listen to myself. And let me tell you, like those early episodes, listening to them now, it's like, oh, this is so rough. Oh, rough. But you get
Right.
used
Yeah.
to it. You get used to it, like, because it's trial and error. I mean, the trial and error twins, like, they're our best friends. We don't necessarily like them, but we got to spend time with them. Otherwise, like, how do we proceed if not for trial and error?
Absolutely. Hey, mistakes are our greatest teachers. No, you said it perfectly, and I'm sure that's, yeah. I mean, this is because you've done, I mean, almost 400 episodes already of this. I mean, and I'm sure, and that's just on this podcast. So I mean, you've probably you've listened to a lot of voice actors, and you've listened to yourself every single time. I mean, that's got to be. I can complain about a 2-minute audition that I have to edit. I can't imagine what it is for you. I'm that's work that yeah. Just hats off to you, my friend.
Like, and sometimes, man, I listen to old recordings. I'm like, okay, who was this again? Shit, I gotta listen to the intro again where they introduce themselves, because I don't know
Right,
who this is.
right. Yeah, that's so funny.
Because the older I get, I don't know if this happens to you, but like the older I get, like my memory is just, it's not very good. And I'm like, when did I record this? Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, didn't I? Yeah, we did
Yeah.
talk about Renaissance fairs. Yeah. That was a thing that happened.
It did, yeah, it did. It does blur the line for sure. Um, yeah, no, I noticed that for sure. I'm thinking, gee, what day was that? Nah, it doesn't matter. If I get within 3 months, that's close. And if you want to talk about Renaissance fairs, that's yeah, I'm all for it too.
Now, I was also about to ask, like, outside of like Rick and Morty and voice acting, like, what are some of your hobbies?
Yeah, that's a great question. We started talking about how you gotta have a life, so I guess I should illustrate that a little bit. Uh, I I like cooking. So I'm a foodie. My wife and I, we're both foodies. We travel when we can, and we like to try new spots and try all different kinds of food. So like that's a big part of just living in a city like LA as well. Is just if you're gonna put up with some of the headache of living in LA, like the traffic, at least have a destination where you can get some good food, and something that you might not get in a small town somewhere, or that just might not be available, or that we've never tried before. So that's a way to keep life interesting. Is just have an appetite for food, and it's an appetite for life, I guess. Um, but the yeah, I mean, I do game, and I have some friends that I consistently game with. We have a bunch of games that we play, but so it might differ day to day. Um, I mentioned I play softball with the Rick and Morty folks, which is a lot of fun. It scratches the itch for me as a former baseball player. I used to play a lot more. Even as an adult, I was in a fast pitch league out here in LA, so that was a way that I would keep fit. I don't know that I could hit a fast pitch at this point. So softball's the way to go for me right now. But it scratches that itch. I I've gotten more into golf recently, which I know sounds more elitist than it is, but it's it's public golf courses in LA are plentiful and there's great opportunities. The weather's amazing, and it's just a fun thing. And it's I have a group of guys that I golf with that are my gamer friends as well. So we're out there with a certain level of humor and we're not pretending to be better than we are, but just it's a great way to get out for a few hours, fresh air, walk a couple miles and stay in shape. And so that's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of ways to entertain yourself here in LA, and so I'm happy to have you know things to do, hikes to go on, day trips that you can take to interesting places. And then, of course, being in the hub of entertainment, everybody's always suggesting new things for you to watch. And so, my wife and I try to keep up with our shows and our comedy specials and things like that. But also I would say my wife is my partner, and in so many ways she's my buddy, and so we we're constantly just finding things to do, and we do it together.
That's pretty cool. And I don't play golf, but I can imagine it's not an easy game to get into because, it's not because it's elitist or anything like that, but it takes a toll on your knees and legs. And I'm like, I can't imagine doing that. It's like it must take a toll on your knees and legs because you have
And
to
your
like,
hips and your back and your neck and your psyche and your ego and your heart and everything. It's yeah, no, it's I've picked the things that I think are the most frustrating and anger-inducing things. Maybe I just need healthy outlets, but yeah, I mean, yeah, for a break from Call of Duty, I will play a round of golf because that makes a lot of sense. Um, so yeah,
I mean, you mentioned Call of Duty, and Call of Duty has crossovers, so I'm kind of wondering, like, where's our Rick and Morty Call of Duty operators? Come on.
I'm asking the same question, man. Hey, put us in the game. Hey, our legendary Keith David has a voice in that game. So many people. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I would love to be a part of that as Rick or not. I mean, there's because if there's more than I've done besides Rick. And so the many projects I've been lucky to be a part of. Yeah, I'd love to be a part of a property like that at some point. It'd be really fun.
I also wanted to ask, like, are there any, like, because you're a gamer and you play all these games, like, is there
Sure.
like any specific franchise you want to be a part of?
Oh yeah, I mean, gee, anything Elder Scrolls would be really fun. Just because I'm such a Skyrim fan. So it'd be really fun to be, like a utility player in the next iteration of that, should it come out. Um, I'm a big fan, also of The Witcher 3. And I'm so grateful. I recently got to meet Doug Cockle, voice of Geralt, and just iconic role, iconic voice. Um, One that I should even mention. It's like it was one on my impression reel for a while. It was like one that I tried to do. But he's the man. But that entire franchise is so well done. I would love to be a part of that. If they do another one, just that would be so cool. Any role. I'm not saying I'm not trying to take over Geralt here, but that's just a game that I feel I could replay over and over again for hours and hours. Um, Helldivers is a new one, and maybe some more potential for DLC and additional character voices. Helldivers has been very entertaining to play. Just it's what a brilliant satire it is, and a lot of great humor in it, and it's just fun. So I would jump at the chance to be a part of that. God, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I there's little I would say no to in the gaming world just because I think it's so fun. Video games are just so fun, and it's also just I don't know. It's almost it can be a lot for somebody to get into a show that's new if they're not already into it. And so you never know with production being what it is. If a new series is going to be a big hit or not. But gaming is sort of like a more direct, in many ways, I feel, outlet to reach a lot of people at once. All it takes is just one update to say Fortnite, and then you've got immediate access to millions of people who are immediately going to hear your work and get excited by it, or so I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity in gaming to to make an impact on people, to reach people. And as I mentioned earlier, that's kind of why I do this, is to amuse people and entertain.
What? How do you have any free time, dude? Because like I can't imagine like trying to juggle like doing Rick and Morty and like playing all these video games. Like, how do you have the
I
time?
Yeah, it definitely cuts into my sleep when it shouldn't. I'm pretty good about my bedtimes before recording days, but yeah, it's that's a good question. I try to manage a schedule that has time for me, and time, time for me and my wife, to have our lives as well. And But yeah, somehow we just try to fit it all in, do what we can.
Also, I also want to talk about like, you mentioned like doing conventions, and I know that you've done like
Mhm.
conventions all over the world. Like, what was that like going from like doing conventions from like the States to I think you did one in Mexico? Was it Mexico or was it?
Yes, so and this is all very recent. So I will say this is a very like new frontier for me. So anything I'm saying is from the perspective of a relative novice. It's not as though I've been doing conventions for years, but yeah, recently I've been very fortunate to go to some really amazing cities. Went to Mexico City, and I actually just recently got back from New Zealand, so that was really cool. There are different It's different types of events. So there's some conventions that I go to just to sign autographs, and then there are other conventions or events, I should say, where the Rick and Morty team, where Adult Swim or Max, depending on the territory, has something planned for us. They'd like us to speak on a panel, or they're doing some promotion for our season, or something like that. So, in the case of Mexico City, it was Adult Swim Latam and Max who invited me to be a guest at their. It was the first time that this has been done in Mexico City, but it had been done in in Brazil before, um, and it was just this incredible convention where and my role was just to basically do some appearances. I wasn't signing or anything, but it was to talk about Rick and Morty, and we had a main stage panel right before House of the Dragon, which was really cool. So it's a blast to go to a new country, a new city, and meet fans there, because it's a reminder just how big and how far-reaching our show is. It's a big deal for a lot of people, and it's really exciting because we don't always get those opportunities to go to places outside the states. And so the fans in Mexico were amazing, and they seemed really excited to be there, and I was excited to be there. And so, for me, just selfishly as an actor, it's like, wow, I got to go on this amazing, trip. And even though it was only a couple days, I feel like I saw a new part of the world and ate some things I never would have eaten. It was like this incredible cultural experience for a couple days. But I know how much it means for the fans to have us be there. And so it's really exciting to do that. And it's a real pleasure when the network says, hey, yeah, let's all go, and it becomes an official event. um, and then there's of course these other conventions that I'll be doing more in the back half of the year, which will take me all around the states pretty much, where it's more to meet fans at the booth and sign. And it's less about the promotion of the show and more about connecting directly with the fans, actor to fan, and talking a little bit about our work, kind of not unlike this, just in shorter snippets.
And how was that experience like? Because like you said, this is like your first time doing the convention circuit, and you're being
Hmm.
put in like with all these other people who've done the convention
Yeah,
circuit way longer than
sure.
you have, and it's like, what was it like? Because I'm curious, like going from like someone who had never done conventions to doing all these
Sure.
conventions, and suddenly you're like, oh, I'm doing a panel with Spencer and Chris. It's like, okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, though that part is absolutely surreal. Just to say, just to be sharing a stage. I mean, it's because it doesn't feel real on a certain level. Just to see and hear your voices in an episode, it's like, oh, that's cool. Like, our names flash on the screen, and you're next to these amazing names and the guest stars that are there. I mean, my first episode, the guest star was Hugh Jackman. Come on, I mean, that is this real life? Um, and so, but there's still an element because it's animated where it's there's a distance there. But doing a panel with Chris and Spencer, or and we did one recently. There was a screening for Unmort Rickon, an FYC for the Emmys that we were all there for. Sarah was there, and we also shared the stage with Dan and Scott Martyr, and so we had with the whole team there, the whole cast, and yeah, it was definitely a surreal moment to share a stage with these people that I love and revere and have been a fan of. Really, me here with them? You guys speak first. You've done this before, so that part of it is still pretty surreal and fun. And I love being on stage with them too. It's in Mexico City. I did a panel where it was just me, and that was terrifying. That was absolutely. I mean, we had fun, and they were really great. But it's a little terrifying to walk out and be the only one there. It's great when you can share it, especially when I can share it with at least Harry. But definitely, when we have Spencer and Chris and Sarah there, they have more stories. They have such great humor that they infuse into those moments, and it puts us at ease because I go out there, I'm nervous, I'm deer in the headlights for at least the first 5 minutes, and it's usually. Spencer usually comes in with a great line or a great joke that just gets a big laugh and then puts me at ease, and so I'm indebted to them. That's real fun. That's a new part of it. To answer your question about sort of the overall though the conventions, like what this is like. I mean, that's the panel side of things, but I will say meeting fans is really wonderful. Just to see how the show has touched and made people happy is a joy. And it's gratifying when somebody calls out something specific in season 7, because then it's like, wow, I had a hand in that. I'm so glad. I'm glad that anything in the show has had a positive impact on somebody. And when they say that, it's great. But when somebody comes up and they're like, "Hey, I loved this moment in season 7," like you have today, like it really touches me because it shows that what we're doing is having an impact. And if it makes someone smile to come up to the booth and hear my voice and or get a signature, whatever it is that people are there for, it's really fun to connect to fans in that way. Um, and I have seen and I've experienced a very positive side of our fandom that is often overlooked. I think there's a reputation. Let's just say there's a reputation that was that is known about any passionate fan base, and what you hear about is the negative side of things or the negative comments. And I will just say that you can find that with anything that people care about, but I have found my interactions with fans at these first few conventions to be overwhelmingly positive, and it kind of what matters to me is that we continue to make these people's days, and if that's first and foremost, it's creating good content and creating an amazing show that people can enjoy worldwide. And then if secondary to that, it can be meeting me and hearing the voice in person or getting their Funko signed, then I'm happy to make someone's day. How could you not love that? Um, and I will say, just as of recording this today, in a couple weeks, I'm going to be doing a charity event, a similar convention where the proceeds go to a children's cancer charity, and that's also opened up my perspective to just how much good can be done. Just you don't think of the impact that you can sometimes have as an actor, and so these things are becoming illuminated to me. They might be well known among people who do these convention circuits, but I'm realizing it for the first time that it's like, wow, okay, what I can do can actually put some good back into the world, and we need that as much as possible. So that's what I've learned so far, and I'm excited to do more.
No, I agree with you 100%. I feel like, a lot of people are like, a lot of people just scoff at voice actors as like, oh, voice actors, whatever. But I think to me, you guys are like some of the nicest people I've ever talked to, and I'm, grateful for everyone who ever takes the time off to come on my show and talk to me. And I'm like, I'm trying so hard not to fanboy because I'm like, it's Rick Sanchez, come on, man. But it's because I like you, I've been a fan of the show since 2013, and
Yep.
I remember the peak of the show's popularity and the bad times. I remember those, but through it all, like I still kept watching it, and I still like kept going with it, and I'm like I said with you guys, I'll be honest, when I first heard the voices for the first time, I'm like, I don't know, man. It sounds, I get it. It's different, but as the season went on, I'm like, oh, they picked they've nailed it. Especially like, and I'll say this, I think Fear No Mort is probably my favorite episode of the entire series because of how it like portrayed those characters and how it like not deconstructed their relationship, but like put it made me rethink their relationship going forward, after Rick Prime and after all the stuff that they've been through, and where does their relationship go now from, from season one to season to now, so
Hmm.
it's interesting.
Sure.
And I love the ending was really frightening because when Morty realizes like, oh, I'm afraid you would never sacrifice yourself and say all these things, when Rick already did that in season two, it's like that's just heartbreaking. That's like, oh, it's not, again, it's not Rick and Morty without that, little spice of nihilism right there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. True to
But yeah.
form.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I love that episode. I think that is my favorite episode. Like that is like an episode I can watch like over and over again and not never get tired of it. Like it's because it's just so beautiful, and
Wow.
your scenes. I know that you guys didn't record together, but your scenes with Kari as Diane was just so beautiful. And I'm like, man, I just it just made me feel bad because it's not real, and when it's gonna end, it's gonna it's gonna mess you up emotionally, and it
Wow.
did.
Yeah, no, and thank you for saying that. Yeah, wow, Kari. I mean, she's another actor that I, just totally admire. Love her work, and I haven't met yet. So again, like Keith, I'm waiting the day when when I can meet and tell her that in person. Um, but what I love is that they gave her a Diane to work with. It's a version of Diane. It's a version of Diane and Rick you know in this fear hole. But it's the closest we've had to a three-dimensional character for her, as opposed to just an off-screen voice. Which, funny gag, but there's more that we can do with that, right? So I love that they went there. I love that we saw that love, that we saw that hurt, that we saw that loss. The puke mouth line was one that I mean, I mustered real tears for that session for sure. Also, I recorded that season as a newlywed, and so it hits different for me too. I'm glad I could plug into that in some way. And you're telling me it resonates with you. That is music to my ears. That's what our entire goal is to reach people like that. So I'm delighted to hear that, and I'm glad that the transition with the voices was one that was smooth and easy to look past, because that was our job. Our job was to be invisible. Our job was to be as seamless as possible so that fans could just enjoy the show. And it seems like you're telling us that was your experience. I mean, that's all we could hope for, right? That's the best part.
Yeah, because I feel like what makes Rick and Morty so great is that it has that perfect balance of comedy and drama, and it doesn't feel out of place. I'm talking about a show where a guy turns himself into a pickle to avoid going to therapy. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's a silly show, but at the same time, it is like very. It can be very sad, and it can be
Yeah.
very like emotionally taxing, and as someone who suffers from depression, and as someone who I mean, it took me a while to, and I've said this before in previous episodes, but it took me a while to be okay with going to therapy. And I know that the therapy episode in this season also got to me because just seeing Rick, even if he doesn't take it seriously, seeing him be more open, and seeing him, there's this one scene where with Summer where he screams at her, and then when she leaves, he's like he just says I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
that got to me some, because I've been that in that situation as well, where I've
Yeah.
lashed out at people who are only trying to help, and I've been there, and it is really hard to admit that you don't only have a problem, but you also need to go to therapy, and it helps.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's I love seeing these characters grow, but I also love like seeing relating to them. And Rick has always been a
Yeah.
character who, again, as someone who suffers from depression, he was always a comfort character for me. And I just want to say thank you so much for doing him justice. And I can tell, like, from listening to you on this show and from talking to you, that this is a character you not only care for but you love. And I am so grateful that you did not you did not dropped the ball with him, because I can
Hey,
tell he's a character you deeply love and you deeply admire. And thank you so much for bringing him to life.
well, hey, thank you um, for opening up there and saying all that. Um, that means a lot, man. Um, yeah, look, that's the hope of any actor that they can connect on that kind of level with anybody. So thank you for sharing that and for saying that. Yeah, it can be. I mean, just in the example you gave with Rick, even with all that work going on, it's not linear. It's tough to do. It's tough to bring yourself to, and you're gonna have two steps forward, one step back, and it's tough to sometimes vocalize what's been going on. And what Dr. Wong says is, it's hard for him to say that he has been changing because it's been slow, but he is changing. Was like a real that was a nugget from that episode for me too, just in terms of how that is for a lot of people's experience. Yeah, it's an absurd show, but it uses the absurdity to connect on that human level, and it's why I take the job seriously. It's not just an impression, and it's why I want to keep doing it because it's because of moments like this where if you're opening up and saying that this show has affected you and spoken to you um, through adversity and in dark times and helped get you through it. That's the power of what we do, and not to make too much out of it, but that's no small thing. And yeah, I take that responsibility with me into every recession that I go into. I just want you to know that I will take this conversation moving forward with me whenever I do my work because that's really what it's all about. So I want to thank you for opening up there. And sharing that because that's big and it's good. It's good inspiration as well.
Yeah, because like I said, the reason I do this show is because I love talking to people, but I also like, because again, I'm not only as a fan, but you guys' work affects me in ways that that you guys don't know about because like you record, you go and you record something and you're like, maybe two or three people will see this maybe, but then you make that announcement and then so many people are like Googling your name and it's like who's this Ian Cardoni guy?
It's a good question. Um, yeah, it's a valid question. Yeah, man. I mean that's what I keep coming to the realization of is just how not I mean we just talked about the worldwide aspect of just sort of how far reaching the show can be, but and you've just illustrated just how deep it can go as well, not just viewership and recognizability, but just in terms of its actual impact on a soul. I mean, dude, that's really why I got in, I guess why I stuck with acting. I guess why I continued and needed to do it. Earlier when I said it's about entertaining people, I mean that's the shorthand for connection. I think we're all striving for connection, and I also think this is getting kind of philosophical, but hey, it's a podcast, right? But I also think that just that so the interaction that we're having now, that honest conversation about it, but just the reciprocation of creating art and having it be received the way it has been by someone who needs the art at that moment, or takes it to heart and cares about it. I mean, that's just the sort of like that's sort of what we need more of in our world, don't you think? I mean, again, it's easy to get a big head about in Hollywood of thinking everything you do is so important, and there's an aspect of sort of keeping yourself in check where it's like, it's at the end of the day, hey, we're making cartoons, but it's a great reminder to have these moments where you realize that, yeah, no, actually what you say matters, what you do matters, and if it reaches out to one person in a tough moment and makes their day, I mean, again, that's worth it. It's worth all the hard work to know that there are people like you watching our show getting that much out of it. And that's kind of who we do it for, you know?
And yeah, and I mean, I'm not afraid of being, more open about, mental health and stuff like that because I do
Yeah,
agree, like, we should be more open about this stuff and we should be like,
sure.
being more vulnerable and just like, because the world sucks, man, and just trying to find any joy I can in it, you know, is more than enough for me because I again, and people would just scoff and say, "Oh, it's just entertainment, it's just whatever." But it's like, no, I mean, it means, it helps get me through a lot of this stuff and through a lot of stuff I'm personally going through. Because look, man, let's be honest. I mean, 2024, the past couple of years have not been good on anybody, and
Right.
we just need, just finding connection and just creating that human connection. I feel like we don't have that human connection anymore.
Yeah.
We just love screaming into the void about why something is terrible, or why this person is terrible, and why this that. No one focuses on the positive. No one just says, "Hey, I enjoy this show because it got me through these tough times." Because we don't
Yeah.
like being vulnerable, and I
Right.
hate that. I hate that so much.
Well, it shows bravery when you're able to put voice to it, because of everything you just said. But I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I give you credit because you've taken the opportunity to create something. You have a show, you have a platform that also keeps you directly plugged in to the work that is speaking to you. I mean, a real credit to you for having this podcast that has put you in contact with the people who are doing work in areas that you're a fan of. I mean, it's there's no what I'm trying to say is it's not a small thing to have a podcast and to be a fan of something or to go to a convention or to just say hi to someone at a booth. Like it's no small thing because you're taking part, you're participating in that connection you're talking about, and you've gone the step further and really creating a piece of media that's hopefully also providing a window for your listeners into that same world. Yeah, it's all about connection, and anyone who's creating opportunities for connection is doing good work in 2024 in my book. So good on you there, man. Keep doing it,
Thank you so much. And
and thanks for
even
having me be a part of it.
yeah, I mean, thank you so much for even taking the time out to do this and being a part of this. And like I said, I know most people would probably be like, "Oh, can you do this voice? Can you do that voice?" But I'm like, "No, man. I respect you guys way too much to be like, oh, can you do the voice?" Because it must get really annoying. I bet like the moment it was announced, everyone was probably like, "Can you say I'm Pickle Rick?"
Yeah, it's yeah, well, but then I had I could then say, yeah, yeah, tune in to Adult Swim, and then you could hear me do it there. No, but I mean, and honestly, if I was physically feeling better today, I'd probably have slipped into the voice a lot more often for you, just because I do get a kick out of it. Um, but I mean, if you want to do a quick little segment to wrap things up and give it some levity, I give it my shot for a couple lines if you'd like. It would
So
be my
Rick,
pleasure.
so Rick, what's the deal with you and Morty?
What's the deal? He's my grandson. He drags me to all these kinds of adventures, but yeah, I don't quite mind it. I like going on adventures too. By the way, I should say I don't speak for the network. I am just a voice today.
Uh, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And before we wrap this up, can you give us an update on what you're currently working on and where can people find you online?
Amazing. Oh, yeah, thank you. So I just want to say thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure. I appreciate you reaching out and taking the shot, and for watching and being a fan. You said some really kind things today, and I appreciate that. I appreciate being a part of this experience with you. Thank you. What I'm working on now, apart from a bunch of auditions and a couple things I'm waiting to hear back on. Of course, I'm hard at work on season 8 of Rick and Morty, and I hope that those listening will tune in when it finally airs. We're looking at 2025. There's always going to be exciting things coming out of the multiverse, so I would just say stay tuned to the official Rick and Morty channels, the Adult Swim channels, and brush up on season 7 if you haven't already, because you're going to want to buckle up for the ride ahead for season 8 and beyond. Really excited, some great stuff coming. That's all the details I have on that, though. I can't give you a release date or anything like that. Only that it's going to be classic Rick and Morty moving forward. Let's go. Um, You can find me online. I'm on Instagram primarily. I don't post religiously, but at Ian Cardoni, pretty simple, straightforward. If there's any conventions coming to a city near any of your listeners, I usually post about them there. So if anybody wants to, meet, say hi, get a little wubba lubba dub dub, or get their Funko signed, that's where to find me. You can see what my schedule is from there. I have a website, iancardoni.com, but that'll probably just direct you to my reps and to my social media. And then, yeah, the best place to hear me or hear me as Rick is on Adult Swim as Rick in season 7 and beyond. Or MultiVersus, you can play MultiVersus for free.
Thank you so, so much for taking the time off to do this. This has been a wonderful conversation. And if you ever want to come back, you know where to find me.
I so appreciate you having me. Thank you so much, and all best to you, Abdullah.
All right,
Thank you
take
for
care.
having me.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.